The Biden administration is allocating $2.3 billion in funding to help communities invest in infrastructure that's designed to withstand the effects of climate change.
The administration is also working to deploy $385 million to the states to fund cooling centers and provide Americans with air conditioning amid the extreme heat that people across the country are experiencing.
What do you think about that, Katie?
Well, I think what's really fascinating about this is that Biden is not declaring climate change an emergency officially. He's been calling it an existential threat. So that's a quote. He says, climate change is literally an existential threat to our nation and to the world. This is an emergency, and I will look at it that way. And it's great that he's looking at it that way. But again, he is the president, and he could declare it an emergency. He's like kind of open to looking into it. He's like emergency curious, I guess, but not willing to commit to it. And that's probably because if he were to declare an emergency, there are actually things to do. So he could have the ability to use the Defense Production Act to ramp up production of renewable energy products and systems. But instead, he gets to just like dedicate a pitiful amount of the budget to climate change.
I have national emergency fatigue personally. I think everything is chalked up to existential crisis. But why would we spend more money, propping up renewables and then also be going to Saudi Arabia to beg for oil? Like, what is the U.S. government's energy policy? I don't understand the policy at all. I don't even know whether I'm against the policy because I cannot tell what the policy is.
Right. Well, it's also interesting because the Pentagon budget for the fiscal year 2022 is like 21 times as much as the amount of money that Biden's putting into reducing emissions. And of course, because the military is such a great perpetuator of climate change, none of this stuff is going to offset the military-related emissions. So, yeah, it's, I think another example of Biden trying to talk the talk without walking the walk. And again, I get that you have, what is it? What did you call it? Fatigue?
National emergency fatigue, yeah.
Yeah, but this does seem like, climate change does seem pretty emergency-ish. So that seems like one that's
kind of emergency-ish. I'll go with. I'm comfortable with kind of emergency-ish. What's that?
Yeah, you're also emergency curious. You dabble in it like Biden.
No, I want to go back to. Look, I want to take whatever reasonable precautions we can take to counter the effects of climate change. But look, the people want lower. They want lower gas prices. They want lower prices of everything. We need to do, it's clear that more investment in renewables in the short term is not going to do enough good. And clearly the administration knows that too, right? They know they need to get more oil from somewhere, especially if they want to continue this. For some reason, they want to keep this war with Ukraine and Russia going, or they're not taking the steps to absolutely slam the brakes on it. They're saying Ukraine needs more money for defense, weapons, et cetera. That's great. Here you go. Here's a check. And nobody is complaining about it really, except like a couple Republicans in Congress, actually.
Right, which is shameful because it'd be nice if any progressives actually spoke out against escalating a proxy war, which is, of course, having major economic and climate-based ramifications that are terrible for the planet. Anyway, though, it seems that Biden has made another gaffe, surprise, surprise, but this time on the subject of climate and cancer. Let's listen.
And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer.
Yeah, and then I saw Glenn Kessler, the Washington Post fact checker, tried to cover and say, well, he's had, a non-dangerous something removed in the past.
Right.
So, but he didn't say he had cancer. He said I have cancer, like in the present, which hopefully he doesn't, or he should be disclosing that, right? That's going to change our who's running in 2024 bingo cards pretty substantially.
Yeah, I wonder if he got cancer in the coal mines that he toiled in, or maybe he was exposed to some carcinogens in South Africa when he was arrested trying to visit Nelson Mandela.
Mm-hmm. Maybe
Just
when he was in that that helicopter with Brian Williams and Hillary Clinton or whatever, coming under fire in wherever those people exaggerated their risk to their lives.
Right, got exposed to some carcinogenic bullets or something. Yeah, never know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's not a very serious gaffe, I guess, but it does
Biden.
put people on guard. Like, what are you talking about? What?
Right.
Well,
CNN's it's pretty low stakes for a Biden gaffe. Yeah.
CNN's technical director, Charlie Chester, said the media company's next focus will, quote, that they will beat to death like they did with the pandemic, will be climate change. Let's take a look.
We're going to start focusing mainly on climate, climate like global warming, and like that's going to be our next I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be our focus. Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
So that's like the next
pandemic story that will beat to death. But that one's got longevity. You know what I mean? It's not like there's a definitive ending to the pandemic, or it'll taper off to a point that it's not a problem anymore. Climate, I think, is going to take years, so they'll probably be able to milk that for quite a bit.
I guess my immediate reaction to that video is that that's not a very good strategy. Like, CNN is going to hemorrhage viewers even more because the climate change has been an issue for years, and it's been something that's being covered for years and years and years. It doesn't have the pandemic came out of nowhere, right, and then was a very dominating media storyline. Trump's kind of sudden lurch into the political sphere and all of that as well was a different kind of story. That climate change is not a new story, so I don't if they're really planning to just change to all climate change news all the time, I think many more people will tune out than are already tuning out. But and you always have to take with a grain of salt. That's another Project Veritas video where they, it's interviewing not the head of CNN, but somebody who works there and agreed to go out for drinks, and then was kind of ranting about their workplace to over drinks with someone they did not know was an undercover conservative activist. So who knows?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite the own that Project Veritas thinks it is. As far as as far as making it new or making it something people would watch, I've always thought that people could report on climate change in a way that was interesting and that got people to watch. Think about how much they focus on the weather and they show these extreme images. But the problem is that the reporting on climate change can't ever really go after the culprits, because they can't expose the way that certain industries or sponsors of the networks are perpetuating this.
That's interesting.
So that would require a different kind of reporting.
Yeah, they do that kind of reporting sometimes. I think it's not. Well, I don't know if they do it CNN or not. But they, there's good investigative reporting on climate stuff. But I don't know. It always has a kind of a sensational bent to, not sensational because I know it does matter, and I know climate change is real and it's affecting our planet, but sometimes the level of, I think personally, you might disagree, that the level of Earth is doomed, there will be no life on this planet will be uninhabitable in 12 years or something, and then that doesn't come to pass, and then a certain amount of people, it sounds very sky is falling. Like, there's a range, right, in how bad the outcomes from climate change will be, from kind of bad to really bad, and we don't know exactly where we're going to land in that, and if we do something, because I know some big, climate change is the most important issue, people who are like, it's too late, we're already screwed, nothing can be done, we're a fallen people, and our judgment day is upon us, where it's like, okay, then why bother doing anything at all then?
We can maybe put off Judgment Day, delay it a little bit. I would agree with you, though, that there should be more, I can't believe I'm going to say this word, I hate this, nuanced reporting on it, though, because of the, like you were, like fatigue, the sky is falling fatigue. I think you're right that a lot of people who are climate change skeptics hear something that's predicted or promised, and then it doesn't come to fruition, which is good because I'm glad we can still live and breathe the air on this planet. But I think that there needs to be better explainers about what things will look like, how we're not sure about the timeline, but these are the trends and this is something that could happen. And certainly we want to do everything to prevent that because it is scary. And these heat waves are deadly, literally deadly.
Yeah, well, I'm on board with that. All right, we'll be back with more Rising right after this. Stay tuned.